The cameras weren't even rolling when the tension exploded, but the shockwaves were felt across the entire reality TV universe. Fans woke up to one question burning through social media timelines, group chats, and comment sections everywhere. Why did Mendeecees Harris and Kirk Frost jump each other? What started as whispers behind the scenes quickly turned into a full-blown storm, with emotions running high, alliances breaking apart, and reputations hanging by a thread. For years, both men have been known for keeping things cool in public, measured words, controlled tempers, and carefully curated images. But insiders say that image shattered the moment egos clashed and old resentment resurfaced. Fans are shocked because this wasn't some petty argument over camera time. This was personal, this was deep, and according to sources close to both camps, it had been brewing for far longer than anyone realized. It all began with a single encounter, an unexpected run-in that no one saw coming. What should have been a routine night turned into a heated exchange, with voices raised, accusations flying, and bystanders frozen in disbelief. "You don't talk about my family," one voice allegedly shouted. "You crossed a line you can't come back from," the other fired back. In that moment, years of unspoken tension erupted, and the situation spiraled out of control. Friends tried to step in. Security scrambled. Phones came out. And just like that, the narrative shifted from reality TV drama to real-life chaos. Within hours, the blogs were buzzing, fans were choosing sides, and the family was left divided. Some blamed loyalty gone wrong. Others pointed fingers at betrayal, money disputes, and whispers of disrespect that cut far deeper than the cameras ever showed. Behind closed doors, emotions ran high. Wives were furious. Children were shielded from the noise. And longtime friends questioned whether this was the breaking point that would permanently fracture relationships built over years in the spotlight. "This didn't have to go there," one insider reportedly said. But once certain things were said, there was no turning back. Now, for the first time, both men are speaking out, each with their own version of the truth, each claiming they were pushed too far. And as their stories begin to surface, the question isn't just who swung first. The real question is what secret finally pushed everything over the edge. Because when pride, family, and unresolved beef collide, the fallout is never simple, and this story is only just beginning. The night everything went left started quietly, almost deceptively calm, the kind of calm that makes you believe nothing bad could possibly happen. Insiders say Mendeecees Harris had no intention of seeing Kirk Frost that evening. No cameras, no producers, no scripts, just a private gathering where egos, reputations, and long-simmering tension all existed in the same space. Fans are shocked because what unfolded wasn't staged reality TV chaos, it was raw, unfiltered emotion finally spilling over after years of silence. For a long time, the two men had managed to coexist in the same industry without crossing paths too closely. They shared mutual friends, mutual enemies, and mutual respect on the surface. Publicly, there was never an issue. Interviews stayed polite, social media stayed clean, but behind closed doors, whispers had been circulating for months. People close to both camps say there was a growing sense of disrespect, a feeling that lines were being crossed indirectly, subtle comments being made, and loyalty being tested without anyone saying names out loud. That night, Mendeecees walked in already on edge. Those closest to him noticed it immediately. His posture was stiff, his energy guarded, his patience thin. He had been dealing with pressure from all sides, family expectations, public judgment, and private frustrations that never made it to the screen. When you carry that much weight, it doesn't take much to push you over the edge. Kirk, on the other hand, arrived calm, confident, maybe too confident according to some witnesses. He was laughing, greeting people, moving through the room like nothing in the world could touch him. The first interaction between them was brief, almost unnoticeable to the casual observer. A nod, a half smile, a handshake that lasted a second too long. To anyone else, it looked normal. To them, it felt heavy. Insiders say there was tension in that handshake, a silent message passed between two men who both felt disrespected in different ways. Neither said a word, but both felt it. As the night went on, alcohol flowed, conversations got louder, and the walls between restraint and reaction began to crack. Friends noticed Mendeecees growing quieter, pulling back, watching from a distance. Kirk was more vocal, more animated, sharing stories that some felt were harmless, while others felt were coded messages aimed directly at Mendeecees. Emotions ran high as laughter from one side of the room began to sound like mockery from the other. Then came the comment. Sources disagree on exactly what was said, but everyone agrees on one thing: it involved family. And once family enters the conversation, there is no such thing as playful banter anymore. Mendeecees reportedly froze when he heard it, his jaw tightening, his eyes locking in. Those standing near him say you could feel the shift in energy instantly, like the air got heavier, thicker, harder to breathe. He approached Kirk slowly at first, controlled, deliberate. Witnesses say his voice was low but sharp, asking what exactly was meant by the comment. Kirk, allegedly caught off guard, responded defensively. What was intended as clarification quickly turned into accusation. Words like loyalty, respect, and betrayal were thrown around with increasing intensity. Fans are shocked because this was not two men misunderstanding each other, this was two men finally saying things they had been holding back for years. People around them tried to intervene, urging them to calm down, reminding them where they were. But at that point, neither man was listening. Emotions ran high, and the past came flooding into the present. Old rumors resurfaced. Old conversations were reinterpreted. Mendeecees accused Kirk of moving funny behind the scenes, of saying one thing publicly and another privately. Kirk fired back, claiming he had been nothing but real, accusing Mendeecees of being overly sensitive and insecure. The argument escalated fast. Voices rose. Faces hardened. Phones came out. Someone shouted for security. Someone else yelled that this wasn't the place. But once pride takes over, logic leaves the room. Mendeecees reportedly stepped closer, pointing, his voice shaking not with fear, but with rage. Kirk didn't back down. He stood his ground, chest out, eyes locked, refusing to be intimidated. This is the moment people keep replaying in their minds. The moment where everything could have stopped. One step back, one apology, one decision to walk away. But instead, a final line was crossed. Witnesses say Kirk mentioned something that hit Mendeecees at his core, something personal enough to erase all restraint. Emotions ran high, and before anyone could react, bodies moved. The scuffle was sudden and chaotic. Chairs scraped, drinks spilled, people screamed. It wasn't a drawn-out fight, but it didn't need to be. The message was sent in seconds. Security rushed in, pulling them apart as voices continued to clash. Insults flew even as distance was forced between them. The family was left divided not just emotionally, but physically, as friends chose sides and tried to shield those involved from further damage. In the aftermath, the room was silent in that uncomfortable way where everyone knows they just witnessed something they weren't supposed to see. Mendeecees was escorted out one way, Kirk another. Neither looked back. Phones buzzed almost immediately. Text messages spread. Blogs got tips. By morning, fans are shocked headlines were already forming, piecing together fragments of the night without knowing the full story. Back at home, the consequences began to sink in. Calls were made. Explanations demanded. Loved ones questioned how it got that far. Mendeecees reportedly struggled with anger and regret at the same time, knowing he had reacted, but feeling justified. Kirk, according to those close to him, felt disrespected and misunderstood, convinced he had been provoked and unfairly blamed. As word spread, reactions poured in from every direction. Friends tried to mediate, others distanced themselves. Some fans sided with Mendeecees, praising him for standing on principle. Others defended Kirk, saying he was attacked for speaking his truth. Emotions ran high online, with speculation filling in the gaps left by silence from both men. But what fans didn't know yet was that this altercation was only the surface. Beneath it lay a web of unresolved issues, private conversations, and long-standing tension that neither man had been willing to address publicly until now. The night wasn't the beginning of the beef, it was the explosion at the end of a fuse that had been burning quietly for a very long time, and as the dust settled, both Mendeecees and Kirk realized there was no going back to pretending everything was fine, because the truth was finally out, even if only pieces of it had reached the world so far. By the next morning, silence felt louder than the fight itself. Neither side had spoken publicly, but behind the scenes, chaos was unfolding. Phones were ringing non-stop, managers scrambling, friends demanding answers, and family members trying to understand how something that started with words turned into hands being thrown. Fans are shocked because both men had reputations for handling things behind closed doors, yet this situation refused to stay private. Mendeecees woke up heavy with frustration, replaying the night over and over in his head. Every word, every look, every second where he felt disrespected. People close to him say he wasn't proud of how it went down, but he also wasn't apologetic. To him, the issue wasn't the fight, it was the principle. He felt boundaries had been crossed long before fists ever flew, and what happened was just the final reaction to months of bottled-up tension. On the other side, Kirk's camp was just as heated. Those closest to him say he felt blindsided, insisting that his words were taken out of context and blown out of proportion. He believed he had been targeted, accused of intentions he never had, and pushed into a confrontation he didn't want but refused to back down from. Emotions ran high as Kirk vented to friends, repeating that he would never intentionally disrespect another man's family, especially knowing how sacred that line is. As the day went on, the stories began to shift depending on who was telling them. Some said Mendeecees walked in looking for a problem. Others claimed Kirk was reckless with his mouth. Fans are shocked because every version sounded convincing, and the truth seemed to sit somewhere in the middle, blurred by ego, pride, and old grudges that no one wanted to fully admit to. Wives and family members were immediately pulled into the storm. Conversations behind closed doors grew tense, voices raised, emotions raw. Trust became a major theme. Questions like, "Why didn't you tell me this was brewing?" and "How long has this really been an issue?" echoed through living rooms. The family was left divided not just between the two men, but within their own homes, as loved ones struggled to balance support with disappointment. Social media didn't help. Cryptic posts started popping up, vague captions about loyalty, respect, and knowing your worth. Fans dissected every emoji, every quote, every song lyric shared, convinced they were clues. Emotions ran high online as people picked sides, turning speculation into fact and assumptions into headlines. Behind the scenes, mutual friends attempted damage control. Calls were made to see if the situation could be de-escalated before it spiraled further. Some suggested a private sit-down. Others warned that too much had already been said. Mendeecees was firm that he wouldn't be painted as the aggressor without his side being heard. Kirk was just as adamant that he wouldn't accept blame for something he believed was twisted against him. What made things worse was the resurfacing of old rumors. Conversations from years ago were suddenly being re-examined through a new lens. Comments once brushed off as jokes now felt loaded. Actions that seemed harmless before now looked strategic. Fans are shocked how quickly the narrative expanded beyond one night into a full character debate about who these men really were when the cameras weren't on. At the center of it all was pride. Neither man wanted to look weak. Neither wanted to be the first to speak publicly, fearing it would be seen as an admission of guilt. Silence became a weapon, but it also allowed speculation to run wild. Blogs ran with anonymous sources. Insiders leaked selective details. The story grew bigger, messier, and harder to control with every passing hour. Mendeecees reportedly felt the pressure mounting. He worried about how this would affect his family, his image, and his future opportunities. But more than that, he worried about the message being sent if he stayed quiet. To him, this wasn't just about a fight, it was about standing firm when you feel disrespected. Kirk, meanwhile, felt his character was under attack. He feared being labeled as sneaky or disloyal, something he felt went against everything he believed he represented. As night fell again, both men sat surrounded by people yet felt isolated in their own thoughts. The anger was still there, but so was exhaustion. Emotions ran high, but clarity slowly started to creep in. They both knew this wasn't something that would just blow over. Too many eyes were watching now. Too many opinions were forming. What neither side realized yet was that the next phase of this drama wouldn't be physical, it would be verbal. The moment one of them decided to speak, everything would change. Narratives would shift, alliances would be tested, and the truth, or at least each man's version of it, would finally start to come out, setting the stage for an even deeper divide that would make the fight itself look like just the beginning. The silence finally broke when word got out that one of them was thinking about speaking publicly. That alone sent shockwaves through both camps. Emotions ran high because whoever spoke first would control the narrative, at least temporarily. Friends warned against it, managers urged caution, but the pressure was unbearable. Fans were already filling in the blanks, and neither side liked the picture being painted. Mendeecees spent hours talking things through with people he trusted. He went back to the beginning, replaying moments that never made it to the public eye. He talked about conversations that felt off, jokes that landed wrong, and situations where he felt his loyalty was tested. To him, the fight wasn't about one comment, it was about a pattern. A buildup of small things that eventually became impossible to ignore. The more he talked, the more convinced he became that staying silent would only allow his intentions to be misunderstood. At the same time, Kirk was having his own reckoning. Those close to him say he felt betrayed by how quickly people assumed the worst about him. He questioned who had been leaking information and why certain details were being twisted. He insisted that the situation was never meant to escalate and that he had no idea his words would be taken as a personal attack. Emotions ran high as he expressed frustration over being portrayed as calculated or disrespectful when he believed he was being honest. Then came the indirect messages. Not full statements, not direct explanations, but enough to stir the pot. A comment here, a caption there. Fans are shocked how quickly these subtle moves reignited the drama. Every word was analyzed, every pause questioned. People debated tone, intention, and meaning like it was a courtroom trial playing out online. Friends who had once moved comfortably between both circles now felt forced to choose sides. Some tried to stay neutral, urging peace and reminding both men of what was at stake. Others quietly aligned themselves based on loyalty and long-standing relationships. The family was left divided further as opinions hardened and patience thinned. What made things even more explosive was the resurfacing of a private conversation that allegedly took place weeks before the fight. According to insiders, there had been a moment where concerns were hinted at but never fully addressed. One side believed the issue had been squashed. The other felt brushed off. That misunderstanding sat unresolved, growing heavier with time until it finally detonated that night. Emotions ran high as blame started shifting from the fight itself to the failure to communicate beforehand. Mendeecees felt his warnings were ignored. Kirk felt blindsided by accusations he never thought were that serious. Fans are shocked how something so seemingly small could spiral into something so massive, but that's how unresolved tension works. It doesn't disappear, it waits. The first real interview rumors began circulating, and with them came fear. Fear of saying too much. Fear of saying the wrong thing. Fear of making the situation irreversible. Both men understood that once words were spoken publicly, there would be no pulling them back. Still, the urge to defend themselves grew stronger by the hour. Late-night conversations turned introspective. Mendeecees reportedly questioned whether pride had played too big a role. Kirk questioned whether he should have been more careful with his words. Regret began to mix with anger, creating an emotional tug-of-war neither man was prepared for. But even in those moments of reflection, neither felt fully wrong. That's what made reconciliation seem so distant. Fans continued to fuel the fire, flooding comment sections with theories and demands for answers. Some begged for peace, others wanted more drama. Emotions ran high as the story took on a life of its own, no longer belonging solely to the people involved. It had become entertainment, debate, and spectacle all at once. Behind closed doors, there were discussions about a possible sit-down. Nothing official, nothing scheduled, just the idea floating in the air. Some believed it was necessary to clear the air. Others warned it could make things worse. Trust was fragile, and without trust, any conversation risked turning into another confrontation. As days passed, the weight of the situation became unavoidable. Both men felt misunderstood, judged, and pressured to perform versions of themselves for the public. The fight had exposed cracks not just in their relationship with each other, but in how they navigated conflict, respect, and accountability. What neither of them could ignore anymore was the realization that this wasn't just about the past. It was about the future. About what kind of example they were setting. About whether this moment would define them or become something they grew from. Emotions ran high as that question lingered, unanswered, setting the stage for a confrontation not of fists, but of words, truths, and choices that would either deepen the divide or begin the slow process of healing. When the idea of a sit-down started feeling real, fear set in on both sides. Not the fear of violence, but the fear of exposure. Because talking meant revealing motives, insecurities, and truths that had been buried for years. Emotions ran high as both men weighed the risk of being vulnerable in a situation where pride had already caused so much damage. Mendeecees was the first to seriously consider it. People close to him say he didn't want the narrative to be written without his voice anymore. He felt the public had turned the situation into something one-dimensional, painting him as nothing more than an angry reaction instead of a man responding to long-term disrespect. The more he thought about it, the clearer it became that silence was no longer protecting him, it was hurting him. Kirk, meanwhile, struggled with the idea. He felt that sitting down might validate accusations he didn't fully agree with. To him, agreeing to talk looked like admitting fault, and that sat heavy on his chest. Still, the pressure was mounting. Fans were demanding answers. Friends were distancing themselves. Business conversations were suddenly awkward. Emotions ran high as he realized avoiding the conversation wasn't keeping the peace, it was making the divide deeper. Behind the scenes, intermediaries worked overtime. Trusted friends carried messages back and forth, carefully choosing words to avoid reigniting tempers. One message focused on respect, another on accountability, another on the bigger picture. Slowly, resistance softened, not because the anger disappeared, but because exhaustion set in. Carrying resentment takes energy, and both men were running low. When the possibility of speaking openly finally felt unavoidable, new tensions emerged. What would be said? What would stay private? What lines could not be crossed? The fight had already blurred boundaries, and neither wanted to walk into another emotional minefield unprepared. Emotions ran high as both sides set conditions, trying to protect themselves while still appearing open. The public sensed something was coming. Speculation ramped up. Fans dissected body language in old clips, convinced they saw signs they had missed before. Some claimed the fight had been inevitable. Others blamed outside influences, saying too many voices had gotten involved. The family was left divided in opinion, with some pushing for reconciliation and others warning that certain wounds don't heal cleanly. As tension built toward a conversation, old memories resurfaced. Moments of support, moments of laughter, times when respect felt genuine. That made everything more complicated. Anger is easier when the other person feels like a villain. It's harder when you remember they were once someone you trusted. Emotions ran high as both men wrestled with that contradiction. The night before the rumored sit-down, Mendeecees reportedly barely slept. His mind bounced between confrontation and resolution. He wanted to be heard, but he also wanted peace. Kirk, according to those close to him, was just as restless. He practiced responses in his head, replaying scenarios where things could go right or spiral out of control. When they finally came face to face again, the energy was tense but restrained. No shouting, no crowd, just heavy silence at first. The kind that forces honesty because there's nowhere to hide. Both men looked older in that moment, weighed down by the consequences of what had happened. Emotions ran high, but so did self-awareness. The conversation didn't start with apologies. It started with frustration, with clearing the air, with each man explaining how he felt disrespected, misunderstood, or dismissed. Voices rose at times, but they didn't explode. The difference this time was intention. Both wanted to speak, but also to be heard. That alone shifted the tone. As details came out, misunderstandings became clearer. Assumptions were challenged. Some accusations were acknowledged as valid. Others were pushed back against firmly. It wasn't clean or comfortable. There were moments where it looked like the conversation might collapse under the weight of old anger. Emotions ran high as both men struggled to balance honesty with restraint. One of the most difficult moments came when family was discussed. That wound was still fresh. Mendeecees made it clear that anything involving his family was non-negotiable. Kirk responded by explaining his perspective, insisting that harm was never his intention. Whether that explanation fully landed remained unclear, but it opened a door that had been closed since the night of the fight. What surprised those involved was how much hurt existed on both sides. Not just anger, but disappointment. Disappointment in how things escalated. Disappointment in how trust eroded. Disappointment in themselves for letting it get that far. Emotions ran high as that realization settled in. By the end of the conversation, nothing was magically fixed. There was no dramatic hug or public declaration of unity. But there was something new, understanding. Not agreement, but clarity. They didn't walk away as friends, but they didn't walk away as enemies either. They walked away aware that the situation was bigger than a single night and deeper than a single argument. The challenge now wasn't what had already happened, but what would happen next. How much of this conversation would stay private? How much would eventually reach the public? And whether this fragile understanding could survive the pressure of outside opinions, social media narratives, and the constant demand for drama. Emotions ran high as both men knew the hardest part might not be behind them yet, but right in front of them. After that conversation, nothing felt settled, only exposed. The kind of exposure that leaves you raw, questioning every move you make next. Mendeecees walked away with his jaw tight, not from anger this time, but from holding back everything he didn't say. Kirk sat back in his seat long after it ended, staring at nothing, realizing that clearing the air didn't mean the smoke was gone. Fans are shocked because what happened next wasn't loud or explosive, it was quiet, strategic, and emotionally draining. The days following that sit-down were filled with second-guessing. Mendeecees replayed the conversation repeatedly, wondering if he had been too honest or not honest enough. There were moments he wished he had gone harder, moments he was glad he didn't. Pride and growth fought each other in his head. On the surface, he appeared calm, but inside, emotions ran high as he struggled with the idea that understanding someone doesn't erase the damage they caused. Kirk experienced something similar but from a different angle. He felt relieved to finally speak his truth, yet frustrated that it didn't immediately shift public opinion. He believed context mattered, but he was learning that once a narrative is out, correcting it takes more than one conversation. The family was left divided again as loved ones debated whether the sit-down was a step forward or just another layer of confusion. Then came the outside noise. Blogs picked up hints that a private conversation had happened, and speculation exploded all over again. Fans demanded details. Some accused both men of hiding the truth. Others praised them for handling things like adults behind closed doors. Emotions ran high online as every move, every silence, every vague quote became fuel. Pressure mounted to speak publicly. Interviews were offered. Podcasts reached out. Everyone wanted the story, but on their terms. Mendeecees worried about being edited out of context. Kirk worried about being misunderstood again. Both feared that saying too much would undo whatever fragile understanding they had reached. Yet saying nothing felt impossible. Friends started voicing opinions more openly now. Some told Mendeecees he needed to protect his image and speak up. Others warned him that public explanations rarely bring peace. Kirk heard similar advice, split down the middle. One side urged him to defend himself loudly. The other reminded him that sometimes dignity is silence. Emotions ran high as both men felt pulled in opposite directions. What complicated everything was the emotional toll on their families. Tension lingered at home. Conversations felt heavier. Trust had to be reassured. The fight may have happened between two men, but the fallout rippled outward, touching everyone connected to them. Fans are shocked how often family becomes collateral damage in situations fueled by pride. Late one night, Mendeecees reportedly reached a breaking point. Not with anger, but with exhaustion. He realized that whether he spoke or not, people would judge. The only thing he could control was his truth. Kirk came to a similar realization around the same time. Both understood that speaking publicly didn't have to mean attacking the other, it could mean owning their perspective. The decision wasn't made together, but the timing was close enough to feel connected. Subtle hints began appearing, statements framed carefully, words chosen with intention. Not apologies, not accusations, but explanations. Fans are shocked by the restraint, expecting fireworks and instead getting measured emotion. Still, restraint didn't mean resolution. Reactions were mixed. Some viewers appreciated the maturity. Others felt unsatisfied, wanting clearer blame and sharper conflict. Emotions ran high as the audience realized real-life drama doesn't always end with winners and losers. Privately, Mendeecees and Kirk continued to process. There was no ongoing communication, but there was awareness. Awareness of each other's boundaries. Awareness of what had gone wrong. Awareness that respect, once cracked, takes time to rebuild, if it ever fully does. The biggest shift came internally. Both men began reflecting on how quickly situations escalate when pride leads and communication lags. Neither excused the fight, but neither denied the emotions behind it. That balance was uncomfortable but necessary. Fans are shocked because the drama didn't fade away cleanly. It lingered, not as chaos, but as unresolved tension. Questions remained unanswered. Trust remained fragile. The family was left divided emotionally, still navigating the aftershocks of one night that changed everything. And as time moved forward, one thing became clear. The fight wasn't the headline anymore. The real story was what each man would do with the lessons left behind. Whether this moment would harden them or humble them. Whether silence would turn into distance or into peace. Emotions ran high because the ending hadn't arrived yet, only a pause, heavy with possibility, setting the stage for what comes next. Time didn't heal anything right away, it only stretched the tension thinner and wider at the same time. Weeks passed, but the situation followed both men everywhere. Every room they entered felt different. Every conversation felt cautious. Mendeecees noticed people watching him more closely, measuring his reactions, waiting for a sign of anger or regret. Kirk felt the same eyes on him, reading into his tone, his silence, his presence. Fans are shocked because even without another confrontation, the drama refused to die. The industry shifted around them. Invitations became selective. Some doors opened wider in support, others quietly closed. Mendeecees felt loyalty tighten around him in some places and disappear in others. Kirk experienced a similar split. People he thought understood him questioned his judgment. People he barely expected reached out with unexpected support. Emotions ran high as both men realized how much perception controls reality once a story escapes your hands. Private conversations continued in separate worlds. Mendeecees talked more openly with his inner circle about anger, about how quickly respect can feel threatened when you already carry so much pressure. He admitted that holding things in had played a role, not in excusing the fight, but in explaining why it exploded the way it did. Those talks weren't easy. They forced him to look inward instead of outward. Kirk's reflections were different but just as heavy. He focused on intent versus impact. On how words meant one way can land another. On how confidence can sometimes be mistaken for carelessness. Emotions ran high as he wrestled with the idea that even without bad intentions, harm can still happen. That realization didn't sit comfortably, but it stayed. The families continued to feel the ripple effects. Gatherings felt awkward, names were avoided, tension lingered in the air even when no one spoke about it. The family was left divided emotionally, unsure whether to push for closure or let time create distance. Loved ones wanted peace, but peace without clarity felt fragile. Fans didn't move on either. Comments resurfaced whenever either man posted anything. Support and criticism came mixed together, sometimes in the same sentence. Emotions ran high online as people projected their own experiences with respect, betrayal, and pride onto the situation. The story became bigger than the people involved, turning into a symbol of unresolved conflict. There were moments when Mendeecees considered reaching out again. Not to argue, not to explain, but to acknowledge the weight of everything. Each time, hesitation stopped him. Not from fear, but from uncertainty. Kirk had similar moments. Texts typed and deleted. Calls considered and dismissed. Sometimes silence feels safer than saying the wrong thing. What neither man admitted publicly was how tired they were. Tired of being misunderstood. Tired of defending themselves. Tired of carrying a situation that had no clean ending. Emotions ran high because exhaustion doesn't erase anger, it just changes how it shows up. Behind closed doors, growth happened quietly. Mendeecees started setting firmer boundaries, addressing issues sooner instead of letting them stack up. Kirk became more mindful of how his words traveled, not just what he meant by them. These weren't dramatic transformations, but subtle shifts that mattered. Still, the unresolved nature of their conflict lingered like unfinished business. Not every story needs reconciliation, but every story needs acknowledgement. Fans are shocked because neither man offered a clear ending, and that uncertainty kept the narrative alive. There were rumors of crossing paths again, shared spaces, mutual events. Each rumor reignited speculation. Would there be tension? Would there be another explosion? Or would there be restraint? Emotions ran high because no one knew what version of the story would show up if they met again. Internally, both men understood something crucial. The fight had changed them, but it didn't define them unless they let it. That understanding didn't bring peace overnight, but it offered direction. Growth instead of bitterness. Awareness instead of denial. As months passed, the noise softened but never fully disappeared. The situation became less about blame and more about boundaries. Less about proving who was right and more about choosing what mattered next. The family was left divided in memory rather than action, still feeling the impact but learning to live around it. Fans are shocked because real life didn't deliver a dramatic finale. There was no final showdown, no public apology tour, no explosive reunion. Just two men carrying the consequences of a moment where emotion overpowered communication. And maybe that's the most uncomfortable ending of all. Not chaos, not peace, but something in between. A reminder that some conflicts don't resolve loudly. They fade slowly, leaving behind lessons, scars, and unanswered questions that shape what comes next. Emotions ran high not because of what was still happening, but because of what had already happened, and the quiet understanding that some moments change you forever, whether the world ever sees closure or not. By the time the story reached this stage, it no longer felt like a fight between two men, it felt like a mirror being held up to everyone watching. The drama had evolved from physical confrontation into something heavier, quieter, and far more complicated. Fans are shocked because instead of clear villains and heroes, what emerged were flaws, emotions, and choices that didn't fit neatly into headlines. Both men continued moving forward publicly, but privately the weight remained. Mendeecees carried a sharper awareness of how quickly things can escalate when pride goes unchecked. He became more selective with his circle, more cautious with his words, and more protective of his peace. Not because he felt defeated, but because he understood how much he had to lose. Emotions ran high internally as he balanced strength with restraint, something that didn't come naturally but felt necessary. Kirk's path wasn't easier. He faced the reality that intention doesn't erase impact. Even when he felt misunderstood, he had to confront the fact that perception shapes reality in the public eye. That realization didn't sit well at first. It challenged how he saw himself and how he expected others to see him. Emotions ran high as he adjusted, learning that clarity sometimes requires accountability, even when you don't feel fully wrong. The families continued to navigate the aftershocks. There were moments of laughter again, but they felt different, more cautious. Conversations avoided certain topics. Names were mentioned less frequently. The family was left divided emotionally, not in loyalty, but in how to process what had happened. Some wanted closure. Others preferred distance. Everyone wanted peace. What lingered most was the absence of a definitive ending. No public reconciliation. No final statement tying everything together. Just time passing and people adjusting. Fans are shocked because the lack of resolution made the story feel unfinished, and unfinished stories tend to haunt longer than dramatic endings. There were moments when growth was visible, subtle but real. Mendeecees addressing issues earlier instead of letting them build. Kirk choosing words more carefully, aware of how easily they can be misinterpreted. These changes didn't erase the past, but they shaped the future. Emotions ran high because growth often comes with discomfort, and neither man escaped that. The industry slowly moved on, but it never fully forgot. References popped up in conversations. Comparisons were made, lessons were drawn. The situation became a cautionary tale whispered behind the scenes. Not about fighting, but about communication, respect, and how quickly things spiral when neither side feels heard. Fans continued debating long after the headlines faded. Comment sections became philosophical, less about blame and more about understanding. Some related to the pressure of holding things in. Others recognized the danger of speaking without considering impact. Emotions ran high because the story tapped into universal experiences, not just celebrity drama. What stood out most was how both men handled the aftermath. No constant jabs, no prolonged social media warfare, no attempts to reignite the chaos for attention. That restraint surprised many. Fans are shocked when drama doesn't milk itself endlessly, but sometimes silence is the loudest statement. Still, silence doesn't mean forgetting. Both men carried lessons forward. They didn't become friends again, but they didn't remain enemies either. There was a mutual understanding that some bridges don't need rebuilding, they just need respecting from a distance. The family was left divided in memory, but united in moving forward. Healing didn't look dramatic, it looked slow, awkward, imperfect, and real. Emotions ran high not because of ongoing conflict, but because of reflection. In the end, the fight became less important than what followed it. Not the punches, but the pause afterward. Not the argument, but the awareness it created. Fans are shocked because the real drama wasn't the altercation, it was the emotional aftermath that forced everyone involved to confront themselves. And maybe that's why this story stuck. Because it didn't end with a bang. It ended with growth, discomfort, and unanswered questions. A reminder that not every conflict gets wrapped up cleanly, and not every lesson comes without scars. Emotions ran high because the truth isn't always loud, sometimes it lingers quietly, shaping everything that comes next. As the months stretched on, the situation settled into something unfamiliar, but fans are shocked because the absence of chaos felt almost louder than the chaos itself. Both men became more guarded in public spaces. Rooms were read more carefully. Tones were measured. Interactions were filtered through the memory of how fast things once escalated. Emotions ran high internally, but externally, control became the priority. Neither wanted to relive the consequences of that night. There were moments when the past crept back in unexpectedly. A comment taken the wrong way. A look that lingered too long. A rumor that reignited speculation. Each time, restraint was tested. The difference now was awareness. Instead of reacting instantly, both men paused, recognizing the cost of another explosion. Growth didn't erase emotion, it taught them how to sit with it. The family dynamics continued evolving quietly. Healing didn't follow a straight line. Some days felt normal, others felt heavy again. The family was left divided in how they remembered the situation. Some framed it as a lesson learned, others as a warning never to ignore small issues before they grow. Emotions ran high during private conversations, but those emotions were softer now, less volatile. Fans slowly adjusted too. The story faded from trending topics into long-form discussions and throwback debates. Some viewers admitted their perspectives had changed over time. Others stayed firm in their opinions. Fans are shocked how much space time creates for reflection, even in drama that once felt explosive. What remained unresolved wasn't the fight itself, but the emotional residue it left behind. Trust once cracked doesn't snap back into place. It rebuilds slowly, or it doesn't rebuild at all. Both men accepted that reality. They didn't chase closure aggressively anymore. They allowed it to form naturally, or not at all. There were no public reconciliations, but there were moments of mutual respect from a distance. Shared spaces navigated without incident. Acknowledgement without engagement. It wasn't friendship, but it wasn't hostility either. Emotions ran high the first few times this happened, but each time got easier. Privately, both men acknowledged something they never said out loud. The fight forced them to confront parts of themselves they had avoided. Pride, ego, silence, assumptions, uncomfortable truths that might have stayed buried if not for that night. Growth came from that discomfort, even if it wasn't pretty. The industry took notes. People spoke quietly about the situation as an example of how fast things can spiral when communication fails. It became a lesson passed along in whispers, not headlines. Fans are shocked because sometimes the biggest impact of drama happens long after the cameras stop paying attention. Looking back, the fight no longer felt like the center of the story. It felt like a turning point, a moment where emotion overtook logic and consequences followed. What mattered more was everything that came after. How both men chose to carry it. How they chose not to repeat it. The family was left divided for a time, but not broken. Relationships adjusted. Boundaries were respected more clearly. Conversations became more intentional. Healing didn't look dramatic, but it was real. In the end, there was no clear winner or loser. Just two men shaped by a moment they couldn't undo. Fans are shocked because real life didn't deliver a clean ending, only evolution. And maybe that's the truth behind all the noise. The real drama wasn't the fight, it was what it revealed. About pride, about respect, about how quickly silence can turn into damage. Emotions ran high because the story never fully closed, it simply transformed, living on quietly in choices, boundaries, and lessons that would shape everything that followed. Now that you've heard how everything unfolded, the tension, the silence, the conversations behind closed doors, and the fallout that followed, the biggest question still remains unanswered. Were things handled the right way, or did pride get in the way of real resolution? Fans are shocked because this story doesn't come with a neat ending, and that's exactly why your voice matters. This situation involving Mendeecees Harris and Kirk Frost has sparked debates everywhere. Some people believe respect should always be defended no matter the cost. Others feel communication should come before confrontation. Emotions ran high on both sides, and the family was left divided in ways that still linger beneath the surface. But what do you think? Do you believe the fight was inevitable after everything that built up behind the scenes, or do you think it could have been avoided if things were addressed earlier? Was silence the real enemy here, or was it ego? Do you side more with standing your ground, or choosing restraint even when emotions are running high? This is where you come in. Drop your thoughts in the comments and let your voice be heard. We want to know which parts of this story stood out to you the most. Was it the moment everything exploded, or the quiet aftermath that followed? Do you think time really heals situations like this, or does it just teach people how to live with unresolved tension? If you enjoyed this deep dive into the drama, don't forget to like this video. It helps the channel more than you know and lets us know you want more stories like this. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss when we drop the next explosive breakdown. Trust us, you won't want to miss what's coming next. And remember, this isn't just about celebrity drama. Stories like this reflect real-life situations we all face: miscommunication, pride, respect, and the consequences of letting things go unsaid for too long. Fans are shocked because sometimes the loudest lessons come from the quietest endings. So before you click away, take one more moment. Comment below and tell us your take. Was this a lesson learned too late, or a necessary wake-up call? We'll be reading every response, and your opinion might just shape the next conversation. Until next time, stay locked in, stay curious, and stay ready, because when emotions run high and the truth starts coming out, there's always more beneath the surface.